Hi, everybody. Welcome to my awesome show. I apologize for my appearance. I am not made up today, but it's been a long week. So here we go. So we're talking about what is a woman. And if you haven't seen this documentary, I encourage you to watch it because it is very eye-opening. My mom watched with me a little bit today. Joel watched some of it today. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the stuff. Obviously, I can't stream it. We tried to work that out, but I think it takes a little bit of extra work to do that. So we're going to talk about it. And if you don't have a Daily Wire subscription, it's worth it just to watch this documentary for real. It's very, very, very eye-opening to what the medical community, the psychological community, the academic communities are teaching our kids. It's really, 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 really scary. The biggest thing that I noticed while watching this is the whole idea that there is no more truth. There's your truth, or my truth, or his truth, or her truth, or its truth, but no truth anymore. And that's a really scary thought in my eyes. That's a very scary thought. So before we get into this, I wanted to show you something that is brought out in the middle of this documentary, and it's a book. And let me see if it's Perfectly Normal is what it's called. And there was a doctor that was Matt Walsh was talking to, and she was describing this book, and he opens up this book, and there's just this insane craziness going on. And I think we have a picture of one. Yeah, here we go. And this is for 10 and up, by the way. But I mean, you can just see by the picture, you can see by all the stuff that's on here. These are the kinds of books that they're encouraging our children to read. And it's been going on for a while, and I know I'm always harping on this stuff, but it's really important. Truth to power, as Democrats say. Yeah, truth, apparently, if you want to speak the actual truth, the reality piece, then you're transphobic or homophobic or whatever phobic that they want to call you. It's insane. So anyways, in this documentary, Matt Walsh explores the question of what is a woman. And he explores it very thoroughly. I mean, he even travels to Nairobi, I believe. He goes everywhere. And it's really interesting to see the differences between Western culture and other cultures, too. Like, in Nairobi, he's talking to a tribe, and they're laughing at him when he's describing what in America we're dealing with. He asks them, can a woman be a man? And they're like, no, of course not. And they had no problem defining the question, what is a woman? And they said, a woman can give birth, a man cannot. And then he goes on to ask them, and this was really funny because the guy was so innocent and he just had no idea what he was talking about. I mean, they've never heard of this. It wasn't just that they don't agree. It was they had never heard of this. And he asked them, he goes, what if a woman has a penis? Or what if a man has a vagina? And the guy, he could not wrap his head around it. And the way he asked Matt Walsh, he says, well, how do they have sex? Like, where does it go if the man has a vagina or the woman has a penis? Where does it go? It was just really interesting to see the pure innocence of not knowing what that meant. 100% not knowing what it meant. And I think that in many ways, I wish that we had that same concept right now. I'm really worried that we're going down this path, and now it's kind of like a freight train at this point. So he goes on, he travels all over the country. He talks to experts in every field. And sorry, there's some craziness going on in my studio. My mom is visiting, and so she's back there watching with Joel. So say hi to my mom, everybody. So he speaks to experts in their field. I mean, he talks to psychologists, therapists, doctors, gender-affirming therapists, whatever that is, and pretty much any expert in the field you can think of. And it's really, really interesting. He even talks to this old man who owns a store who got in trouble, and I can't remember where he got in trouble at, but he got in trouble in this town where a city councilman was just put into office in his town, and the city councilman is a transgender female, so I guess They like to be called a city councilwoman. And the city councilwoman shows up at this guy's business, and this is an old man. And she shows up at his business, and the old man refuses to call her a she. See, it's confusing, okay? Anyways, the old man says if you have a dick, you're a man, basically. And this video goes viral. This transgendered female council person is screaming at this old man. And so Matt Walsh goes and asks him the question, what is a woman? He's like, a woman is a female human. I mean, if you have a penis, you're a man. If you have a vagina, you're a woman. It's that simple. And Matt Walsh goes, is it really that
Awkward.
simple? And he goes, yep, sure is. And that was the end of it. And so this old man was much wiser than a lot of the other people in the video. So anyways, also near the end of the video, Jordan Peterson is on there. He's really, really, really bright. I really enjoy Jordan Peterson because he speaks his mind, and he comes from psychology background, and he kind of punches a lot of holes in a lot of these theories. So that's really interesting to watch. But I have some stories I wanted to tell you that I learned today from watching this documentary, and I learned a lot. So I know a lot of us are wondering, how did this come to be? How did we get to this point of you could be any gender you want? How did we get to the point where we're teaching our kids this stuff in school? How did we get to the point that if you question it, if you don't agree, that you're the bad guy? And they laid out a lot of stuff that is very, 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 very interesting and compelling. And I had no idea about it because they've worked really hard to keep it out of public knowledge. They keep it away from people knowing exactly how this came to be. Because I think if people know the kinds of men that influence this ideology and this behavior, I think even some people that are the biggest supporters might have changed their minds. Hi, Dorinda. Joel said the information is so good in the video. We are going to be working on getting permission to do a watch party with the video. Yeah, we are working on it because it is so good. I mean, I am going to be able to tell you guys maybe 5% of everything in this video. And I worked really hard, like really fast as we're getting ready for the show to try to write down the most important notes to me, the stuff that was the most important to me to say and to get out. But it's so much information and so much craziness going on in this video. You have to watch it. And I'm hoping that we can get that watch party going because it's really, 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 really good. Jay said, I don't remember voting for any of this. Yeah, that's a problem. They don't care if you voted for it, to be honest. These school districts are following. Now, when I talk about this, you kind of get where it comes from. It's crazy. It's when you go dig into how this happened, it's really, really, really makes a lot of sense of how we got here. But they don't care what the parents want. They care where the money is. And that's what's happening here. This is partially, well, a lot about money and a lot about power. Spot says males don't have a uterus. Males becoming a female just have an inverted penis without any female parts. And Joel said that's because they are doing it all behind the scenes and now shoving it down our throats. Exactly. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes. Now, I know, okay, so where I'm going to start is kind of a long story. So before we get into this first person that was really influential in this kind of behavior, I want to talk about one of our sponsors. I know I'm doing this early, but I need to because I'm going to go off on a tangent once I get started. And then we won't get our sponsors in, and we can't do that. So our first sponsor is Whitney Signs. They are, like I say every week, they're incredible. They work very, very hard. They'll travel to you. They'll go all over. They are also really, really, really influential in our town as well as they help community service. They were out all weekend helping with a nonprofit doing all kinds of fun events for the community. Even Miss Mary Whitney from Whitney Signs herself was painting faces for the community, and there are lots of happy little kids out there. They just deserve the world, and I hope that anybody needs a sign or banners or stickers, anything like that, look up Whitney Signs. Here's a video. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about people that have influenced this kind of behavior. So the first person I'm going to talk about is Alfred Kinsey. Alfred Kinsey started the entire gender reaffirming madness. He was a sick man. He was a social reformer who wanted to rid society of Judeo-Christian values when it came to sexuality. He worked very hard and basically succeeded based on our culture today. If you look at our culture today, Alfred Kinsey would be ecstatic. This is exactly what he wanted. Okay? Yeah, he does look freaking evil. Okay? Evil as can be. Somebody said if the school tries anything with our kid, I will call them out. Yeah, do that. So Kinsey, his idea was that children are sexual at birth, and true happiness is based in perversion and sexual experimentation. It came out that his research was fraudulent because he based his fraudulent conclusions on data he collected from convicted sex offenders and child molesters. His research was done in prisons. It wasn't done in everyday America. And he performed horrific sexual experiments on children, some under the age of 1 year old. He had a famous book called Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, and it contains an infamous chart called Table 34, which documents the orgasms of very young kids, including babies as young as 5 months. And if you look at this chart, or Table 34, and you read this, just take a look at this for a second. He documented this. How do you think he came across this information? Where is he drawing these conclusions from? If he's basing his research on speaking to convicted sex offenders and child molesters in prison, think about that for a minute. Think about how he came up with this information for this chart. It's disgusting. And instead of suffering the consequences for his behavior, for all these crimes he's committed against children, and hi Tony, so all the crimes he committed against children, all this crazy ideology, instead of facing the consequences or having any kind of consequences, he is celebrated by academia, by Hollywood. There are movies made up about this guy, and his ideas have formed the foundation for sexual education in public schools today. I urge you to do your research on Alfred Kinsey. I just started to open up the wormhole that is Alfred Kinsey, and the amount of craziness surrounding this man. And back in those days, and nobody stopped him. Nobody said no. Everybody went along with this. And now our schools are following his theories. They're following his ideologies. They're pushing exactly what he was peddling back then. And his dream was to get rid of Christian values and the nuclear family and all these things that are what we've raised our kids on and grown up in. He wanted to do away with that because he was a sick man. And he wanted to live in a culture where it was totally acceptable to be perverted. And look what's happening. Do you guys not see that clearly that's what's happening here? Then you go on and you go, so now you have this man who has come up with this ideology for sexual education. Okay? He's talking about how kids are inherently sexual. Okay, hold on. Someone said, well, any good scientist, Joel said, makes me sick. Tony, hi. I think I said hi already, but I'll say it again. Well, any good scientist would do the research themselves. So yeah, y'all can fill in the blanks with that. Liam Neeson played him in the movie. Yep. So you go from this man, okay? So you've got Kinsey, this guy who believes kids are sexual from 5 months old or from birth. He records this disgusting data about these children. He wants to do away with Christian values. He wants to push sexuality throughout our culture. And then you bring in John Money. John Money was a psychologist and a professor at Johns Hopkins University. He believed he created gender ideology, basically. This freaking sicko coined the term gender identity and gender roles. Hi, Rhonda. He believed babies are gender neutral at birth and environment determines their gender. He tried out his theory. Now get this. This crazy psycho tried out his theory on 2 young twin boys, the Reimer twins. And I encourage you to look this up. Look up John Money, look up the Reimer twins. One of these twins actually was on Oprah at one point describing the insane abuse that they received from John Money. So how these twins came to be around John Money was these kids, so you had twin boys at 8 months old, their parents took them in for a circumcision. Okay, there's the Reimer boys. Now, Bruce, he was the first twin to get the circumcision, and there was an accident and his penis was burnt off. And the parents, of course, they didn't go through with it with the second twin. They said, he's not getting circumcised. We're not doing this. The parents are confused. They're worried. They're scared. They don't know what to do. And in comes freaking John Money to convince the parents to raise Bruce as a girl and raise his twin brother as a boy. Because he wanted to push his theory and prove his theory. And he didn't care who he hurt. He just wanted to prove his theory. So he basically used these boys as experimentation. Not only was he experimenting with the parents, convincing the parents to raise them differently to see if it changed who they were, but he also convinced the parents to transition Bruce totally into a girl. And he also conducted terrible sexual experiments on both of these twins, including forcing them to simulate sex acts on each other. Bruce could never accept his female identity. And when his parents told him the truth, he decided to transition back to a boy and called himself David. David, as an adult, spoke out. He spoke out as wherever he possibly could. He clearly had a lot of deep-rooted pain, and so did his brother. And unfortunately, the damage was already done to these boys. John Money reported that up to the age of 10, he reported that the experiment was going perfectly. That the twin that was being raised a girl was perfectly successful as a girl. The twin that was being raised a boy was perfectly successful as a boy. And he lied. He clearly lied. And now you have these adult men who went through the most horrific abuse in their childhood by this sick, perverted freak. And then, unfortunately, at the age of 38, David's brother died of an overdose, and David, a few years later, killed himself. This is the consequences to this kind of experimentation on our kids. Someone said maybe that's all kinds of pain there. That guy looks like a pedo. Maybe they need to burn something off on that guy. Yeah. Someone else said that's so vile. That person is sick and should be dealt with inside a maximum security prison like Pelican Bay in general population. Yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. And the thing that's so sick about this is there was nothing done to Kinsey or Money. In fact, Money never even apologized for the horrific life these boys went through, even when they started coming out. Okay? And then, now you see that not only did he not face any consequences, neither did Kinsey, but now Kinsey's ideologies were adopted, so pushing sexuality on our kids, right? Pushing sex at every age, right? Now Money, his theories were adopted by mainstream psychology, and they form the basis of this gender ideology today. So these two perverts, these two sick men, are what started this whole mess. And instead of doing something back then and making them face consequences for these horrific crimes they committed, this disgusting experimentation on our children, they were praised. by being progressive and forward and all this crazy stuff. They were praised. And then, now, this is where our ideologies are coming from. This is why sex is being pushed on our kids. This is why gender is now a construct. All this came from these two evil men, and everybody helped pushing it along. I urge you guys to do your research on these two men. It will completely shock you. It is heartbreaking. Joel said, boom, mic drop, pedos started it all. Exactly. And, I mean, pull that picture up again. Look at these boys. Now, the one on the right is Bruce. Bruce is the one that they tried to raise as a girl. And his brother is on the left. It's heartbreaking to me that our kids went through this. And instead of punishing these pedophiles and these disgusting perverts, we glorified them. Someone said, is that guy still alive? Such a sad situation. There's a special place in hell for him. Most prisoners hate child molesters, and I've been witness to 4 child molesters in prison and saw about 30 assaults on them by other inmates. I know that to be true, too, because I had a family member that was a prison guard, and he used to tell me that child molesters and women beaters were not safe in prison, especially in general population. They would usually have to put them in solitary confinement in order to keep them safe. Well, when I found this out today, when I watched this documentary and I found this out, I could not believe it, but I can believe it because it's such a sick, perverted amount of stuff that they're teaching our kids. It's so screwed up. It's messing with our children. It's killing our children. And to find out that this all stemmed from pedophiles who wanted to be accepted as the sexual deviants they were, pedophiles that wanted to experiment on our children, pedophiles that were twisted and mentally ill. It's not shocking to me that that's where this came from. It's not shocking to me that they've covered this up. But now, those of us that know need to make sure that this truth, the truth, is out there. The people know where this is coming from. And I firmly believe that some of these people that agree with this behavior, because a lot of people are good, right? So not everybody that agrees with this is bad or evil or sick. They just are confused, or they're ignorant, or they're believing the wrong people. And I firmly believe that there's quite a few people that are pushing this ideology along, thinking that it's better for our kids. If they found out this information, I think they would change their minds. Joel said there's a place in the ocean with a heavy brick to keep them. How could anyone that delusional be praising pedos? Oh wait, Democrats do, and sickos do. And Joel said, I want to be clear, I have nothing against the people who struggle with it. I have something against the people who try to indoctrinate our kids and abuse them in the process. Yeah, exactly. I mean, gender dysphoria is real. That's a real mental health problem. But we're treating it 100% wrong. And if you watch this documentary, you'll learn from other experts in their field that aren't afraid to speak out, saying this is killing them. It's killing them. And typically kids, specifically kids prepubescent that feel this way, if they are reaffirmed in if they are helped to find their identity, and they are given the tools to feel confident and strong, and they get through puberty, most of them, that feeling goes away. And I'm not saying that it's just going to go away, but I am saying that we're handling this 100% wrong. And we're following the lead of 2 crazy psychos who have led the way. So something needs to change here. Something big. Anyway, so there's a lot more to talk about in this documentary. My big thing, I wanted you guys to hear exactly where this came from, because I believe that is a huge part of the problem. Pushing up and almost idolizing people that are twisted and abusing our kids in every way possible is just It's shocking. It's hard to hear. It's not surprising, unfortunately, because of where we're at. But we can do something about this. Before we get into the next story, I'll talk to you about one of our other sponsors. Now, a great place to go when you're frustrated and you're busy dealing with all this craziness of the world and you just want to get away for a little bit. You want to have some fun with your family. You don't want to worry about any negativity. You want to have some clean family fun, eat some good food, and enjoy the people around you. The great place to go is the Hitch and Post. They have awesome games for the kids that we spend so much money when we're there because our daughter plays these games like crazy. They have amazing pizza. They also have the watering hole next door where they have pool tables and good drinks for the adults. It's a great place to be with an owner who loves our community, who loves America, and who loves kids. Check it out, Hitch and Post. Sorry guys, I needed a sip of my drink. Oh, and there was a lady at the farm festival this weekend that made these cups. I can't remember her name right now, but I will get it and I will post it. She hand paints everything. It's pretty cool. Someone said, hell, Dornbeckers had a webpage set up that pushed kids to a sex shop in Portland. And yes, I've got the proof and can email it to you. I would love to see that proof. And I believe you 100%. I'm not surprised. And I mean, Portland is bad right now. Portland is a leading place of pushing this kind of ideology, and it's crazy. So, before I tell you more stories about this show, I want you guys to see the trailer for it, because there are some of the stories I'm talking about. You'll see some of the people's faces, and it'll help you. At least it helps me to see the people's faces. So let's watch the trailer of What is a Woman?
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person can tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women! We ask you to leave!
What is that?
I'm a husband. I'm a father of 4. I host a talk show. I give speeches. I write books. I like to make sense of things.
A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles. I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
That's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No.
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Can a man become a woman?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is? Do you want to tell us what a woman is?
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I will never be a man.
And so they go on the internet and they're told that all their problems will be solved if they become a man.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
And you're affirming it with hormones that have never been used in this way.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible.
Completely reversible.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders.
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview.
You don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids, or?
How can they be removing the healthy breasts of 15-year-old girls?
There are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What are we going to do about that? Carve them up?
How can this whole thing be happening, Matt?
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much.
I care about the truth. I care about children. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them.
Is it transphobic, to tell the truth?
The interview's over. Stop the cameras.
Excuse me,
Well, they're fair. I just wanted to know, what is a woman?
and you're not gonna find out.
Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They say no, never.
I hope you enjoyed it a little bit.
We'll see when it comes out.
So, so you saw the tribe of guys that were laughing at him. That was right after he had asked them, you know, in my country, this is stuff we talk about every day. We have to, because they're shoving it down our throats, and then they're laughing. I want to talk about Lupron. Lupron is the drug that they're pushing on our kids when it comes to stopping their puberty. It's a hormone blocker. But it is also used to chemically castrate sex offenders. It's the truth. Look it up. Look up Lupron.
Awkward.
See what it's used for. So not only are we using it to chemically castrate dangerous sex offenders, but now we're throwing it at our kids with no long-term research on what this is doing. And somebody else in the movie described exactly, because you hear them saying, oh, it's completely reversible, completely reversible, No, it's not. You're putting hormone blockers in children to stop their naturally needed, medically needed puberty. It's not a switch you can just turn on and off. It's not without risk. It's not without damage. Taking away their natural hormones to go through puberty is putting them at risk of so many things, so many health problems. Also, it's not reversible. There are tons of stories out there of boys who have issues with their genitals and females that can't reproduce, and all these crazy things going on. Also, if you look at the research so they're stopping the hormones and then they're giving them the opposite sex's hormones at the same time. Okay? When you take hormones via pill form or whatever, what have you, that's not naturally produced in your body for 10 years or more, you are basically signing yourself a certificate of cancer. You're basically saying, I want cancer, give it to me now. The research shows that 10 years or more of hormones in your body that aren't supposed to be there, or they're, putting in your body that aren't naturally occurring, it causes cancer at record high rates. So not only are we castrating our children and stopping their naturally produced hormones, stopping their puberty, and that is not reversible. That causes bone loss and all kinds of stuff. I mean, look it up, you guys. It is insane, the side effects of this crap. But then we're adding additional hormones that are just as dangerous to our children's bodies. I mean, can you imagine what's going on in their bodies where the natural process is stopped, and now we're going to simulate a different process in their body at the same time? And they're not even caring about the side effects or what's going to happen to them or what could happen to them. It's just gone so far. Now, you saw the doctor, the lady with the glasses is a doctor that's really honest and upfront and telling the truth. She's the one who opened my eyes and Matt Walsh's eyes to Kinsey and money. And then you see the lady that goes, oh, a little bit. She's a doctor that's performing these sex change operations on children. She even said that she performed a vaginoplasty on a 16-year-old girl or boy. I'm not sure if that's creating. Yeah, so girl or boy. Sorry. It gets really confusing. And then you saw Scott Nugent. I want to talk about Scott Nugent. Scott Nugent, or also known as Kelly Nugent, this happened to her at 42 years old. She was taken on by this ideology and this behavior and this transitioning and all this stuff at 42 years old. She already had her children. She's a mother of 3. And she goes on to say, sure, I medically transitioned to appear like a male, but I will never be a man. She goes on to say that she has had, listen to this, 7 surgeries, a stress heart attack, a helicopter life flight ride because of a pulmonary embolism, 17 rounds of antibiotics, 6 inches of hair in her urethra for 17 months. And nobody would help her, including the doctor that did this to her, because she lost her insurance. She gets infections every 3 to 4 months, and she's not going to survive much longer. This is the long-term effects of what they have done to her body. And you know what? They didn't tell her a dang thing. There was no conversation about risks. There was no conversation. And I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of surgery, and the first thing they do is discuss all the big, hairy, scary, crazy risks, even the most minuscule of ones, all the way up to the ones that are crazy, crazy, radical risks that have probably happened once in a lifetime, but they still discuss that with you. You still sign a paper saying you're willing to take that risk for knee surgery or kidney surgery or whatever you can think of. Why is it that regular surgeries, they will tell you the risk and they will be honest with you and they will discuss this with you, but this, there is no conversation. It's the same conversation that they have about Luprons is totally reversible. Oh, there are no risks. It's a fantasy utopia and nothing bad will ever happen to you. So please jump on this train. And Joel commented, thank you, Kurt, for the link. I will check that out. Joel said it's about the money. Yes, they go on to talk about that. Big Pharma makes big money on the trans community, and the medical field makes big money on the surgery. $70,000 and up for each one of these surgeries. Okay? So, Scott, I'm going to say Scott because that's what it said in the documentary. Scott Nugent said that the phaleoplasty, which if you looked at his arm, or her arm, and I think Joel has a picture and we'll show that again. The phaleoplasty is what she had, which is bottom surgery. It has a 67% complication rate. 67%. Again, when you're talking about any surgery, 67% complication rate. I wouldn't take that chance on myself if I was dying for it, like a major surgery that I needed, not how do you put it, a cosmetic surgery, which is what this is. I wouldn't even take that risk lightly and might not even take that risk as a mother. And they're expecting our children to take this risk. Our children aren't ready for those decisions. How are they supposed to know what they're doing? Our jobs as parents is to love them and to see around those corners and protect them from those corners, not push them into them. And we have 5 major children's hospitals that are promoting doing this to our children. There's no discussion about risks and effects. The truth is that medical transition is experimental. It's 100% experimental. Joel said, sounds like a specific recent drug from the last couple of years, hint, hint. Yeah, for sure. And also, Scott Nugent went on to say that the long-term studies show that the highest risk for suicide in the transgender community, I wonder if you can guess when it is. I'd love to see your comments, and I will tell you in a couple minutes when it actually is. You'd be surprised. For the first time in our history, a marginalized group has a huge dollar sign over their head. We are butchering generations of kids because no one is willing to talk about this. We are letting them do this to our kids. We are letting them butcher our children because we're not willing to step up and stop them because we're afraid to be called transphobic or phobic of any sort. I don't give a crap if you're transgender. I'll love you just the same. But I do care that they're experimenting on our children. And they're allowing our kids to make decisions that are way too big for their brains and their hearts to understand or know the consequences of. It is our job as parents to protect them. So, you think that's crazy? Wait till you hear the story about a dad in Canada. So there's this dad in Canada who is actually going on trial in November because he said no to hormones being injected into his 13-year-old daughter. He was arrested and fined $30,000 for misgendering his daughter. And now he is out on bail awaiting trial.
Wow.
There is actually a law in Canada that basically said, because mom was okay with it, the school was pushing it, and he said, no, you're not going to inject my daughter with experimental hormones. He was arrested. He was treated as a criminal, and now he has to go to trial to defend his right as a father. So Canada's already stepped way over the line by deciding that they know better for the kids of Canada than their own parents. What's crazy about this is now we're seeing this happen in America. And one of the therapists in this documentary said that if you have two parents on opposite ends, right? You have a parent that's reaffirming this gender ideology, and you have a parent that's saying, you know what, no, I'm not sure about this. I don't think this is right. I don't support this medical transition or any of this stuff. They will 100% of the time side with the parent that is affirming this gender transition. 100%. The system is set up to consistently and always take the side of the parent that's affirming that gender. So if you've got parents that are separated, if you have parents that are separated, it's already hard enough on the kids. Now you're going to put them in this position where if they don't affirm this gender transition, they will lose their child and their rights to their child. And that's happening right here in our country. Somebody said, Joel said 6 to 8 years post-transition. Kurt said within the first 2 years. And Sapat said Jaden wouldn't fall for that kind of crap. I am praying that all of us can really, really prepare our children for the kind of psychological warfare that is happening on them right now. Because like Scott said, she was 42 years old when they got her. They took advantage of her feelings and her negative self-worth and her lack of confidence and her lack of self-esteem, and they took advantage of that and they ran with it and allowed her to butcher herself. And now they're doing that to our kids. So for the question that I asked you, the long-term studies show that the highest risk for suicide in transgendered youth, transgendered adults that have had the medical transition surgery is 7 to 10 years after their medical transition. Not before, not during, 7 to 10 years after. I wonder why that is. Is it possibly because their treatment for gender dysphoria by doing surgery is the wrong treatment? Is it possibly because they're not told what's actually going to happen to them? They're not told the side effects. They're not told what they're going to look like. They're not told about having a micro penis or hair in their urethra or tons and tons of infections that will kill them, or 67% failure, or 67%, not failure rate, but complication rate. Is it possible that that's why? So this therapist that she talked to that was actually willing to be able to speak about this stuff and not afraid of what would happen to her if she told the truth, not her truth, not their truth, the truth, said that from 2010 to 2016, 80% of her children that she was a therapist for were transgender. Now, she doesn't have any patients that are transgender. Do you want to know why? Because now, instead of therapy, instead of trying to help them, help their mental health, the way that they manage somebody is they identify as transgender. they go straight to hormones, and then they transition them with surgery. That's it. There's no conversation. There's no therapy. It's just straight down the line. Identify, hormones, surgery. No matter the age. And this therapist is talking about how scary it is that they went from, she had 80% of patients that she saw, or clients that she saw, were transgender, and she was able to actually help them get through this and decide what was right for them, not what they were being pushed to. And now that's been taken away. There is no therapy option. They just go straight down the line like a conveyor belt. Because it's money. They need to make their money. It's just the amount of information that is in this documentary. Like, sure, there's a lot of fun things in there too. Okay? It's really, really funny to see him go to, for example, the Women's March, and he can't get a single woman to tell him what a woman is. Or that Democrat, I think he was a senator that he sat down and talked to in California, that as soon as he asked what a woman was, he got up and left. This guy wouldn't answer it, and then his little lady in the background, Matt Walsh was like, I just want to know what a woman is. And she says, well, you're not going to find out. And then you have this social sciences teacher at a university who Matt Walsh was talking to was getting upset because Matt Walsh asked him questions. And this gender science teacher says, well, why do you want to know? Why do you want to know what a woman is? What do you think a woman is? Well, he's like, I'm asking the question because this is what you do for a living, and I want to know what this is a university where truth is. I want to know what the truth is. Well, then this guy says, well, what's your truth? Or what are the other answers you've received? And Matt's like, so you're really not going to answer the question. There was a lot of not answering the question from these people. A lot of it. So before we finish, I can tell you what, it really pisses me off that our kids are going through this. It really pisses me off that we've allowed it to get to this point. And it really pisses me off that I'm not seeing more people stand up. So what I'd like to see is more people willing to step up and do the hard thing and be treated crappy, or maybe talked crap about, or maybe be called something phobic. And I know it's hard because I've been through public scrutiny before. I go through it a lot because my husband and I are public figures. And it is hard. I have moments when I don't want to do it anymore. But at the end of the day, I'll go through the hard if it saves my kid. And I want to see more people willing to say the truth and stand up for what's right. So a good way to do that is to check out our Pissed Off Patriot line. We have all kinds of cool stuff. Joel's creating all kinds of really awesome shirts and cups and mugs. And if you came to the Farm Festival, you could have seen some of that in person. But yeah, check out our Pissed Off Patriot line. Okay, so I have a few more things to tell you about, and then you'll have to either wait for our watch party or go get a Daily Wire subscription and watch this documentary to get the rest. So Jordan Peterson, he's a really outspoken Canadian. If you don't know him, look him up. He's great. He's great. And he goes on to say, and you kind of saw it in the preview, but he goes on to talk about how, sure, there are masculine females and there are feminine males. What's our answer to that? Does that mean we have to butcher them and rip them apart and put them back together? Or do we need to do something else? Like, logically, what can we do about that? Is there anything wrong with that? No, I don't think so. We have a tomboy for a little girl, but I'll tell you, she's all girl. She likes to play and get muddy and play with the boys and run around crazy, but I would not for 1 second try to change the way God made her. And I sure as heck wouldn't let her be an experiment for some pedophile. So I really want you guys to think about this. I'll put some links up there tonight to link you to some of these people we've talked about. We're going to talk about more of this next week. Of course, it won't be a review of this documentary, but I do encourage it. I would give this a 10 out of 10. I think it was very insightful. I think it was really great to see him asking the questions without pushing anything. Sure, the people that he was asking the questions to, if they didn't like the question, they would get pissed at him and assume that he was one way. And he is a very right-wing individual. But he did a very good job of asking the correct questions and not backing down. Also, what I found interesting was he went to a Virginia school board meeting, and they tried to stop him from speaking out because this specific school district was forcing their girls to share their locker rooms with transgender students. And they were pushing a lot of these ideologies to protect the transgender community and totally forget about the rights of the other kids. And so Matt Walsh wanted to speak. Well, they told him you can't speak unless you're a resident. So he ended up renting a basement of a resident there in order to be allowed to speak. And he gets up there and he has 60 seconds and he just calls them what they are. They're criminals. They're child abusers. And they need to hear it. And it's really, really good. And then he talks about his book, Johnny the Walrus, which is great. We all know that book is awesome because I've read it to you before. And the funniest thing, and I will end with this tonight because I have to end with this. And I hope I'm not giving too much away. But you know what? If you're here listening to this, you already know that there's going to be spoilers in here, and I'm telling you what's going to happen. So, spoiler alert ahead. Okay? The end of the movie, so he's traveled all over the world. He's traveled and he's talked to all these experts, in their field, or experts in their field. Everyone he can think of that would possibly know the answer to what is a woman. And the only people that would answer him are those that aren't willing to follow this ideology. But nobody else could answer this question. They kept having to say things like, well, a woman is whatever you say a woman is. Or if you say you're a woman, then you're a woman. So a woman is a woman. It's a circular definition that makes no sense. That's what he got a lot of, right? So he travels all over the world, tries to find an answer to his question, and then he comes home. And he asks his wife, and she has the best answer ever. She says, a woman is a female human being, and she needs help opening this jar. And that was the end. Perfect answer. Why is that so hard for everybody else to answer? Is what I want to know. A woman is a female human being. When we die 200 years later, they're going to dig up our bones and they'll know exactly if we are female or male. It is that ingrained in our bodies. It is that ingrained in our DNA that you can do whatever medical procedure you want to do, but it will not change whether you're a male or a female. Jay said, what's all this doing to the gay and lesbian community? Just because a person is attracted to the same sex doesn't mean they need to transition into the opposite sex. All these questions make my head hurt. And Joel tried to censor me and it didn't work. I agree with you, Jay. I wonder what it is doing to the gay and lesbian community. And it feels like it's hurting them. They fought to have the rights that they have. And now it feels like this gender ideology is jumping on the bandwagon and trying to follow suit. And it's damaging. Same with women's rights. What about women's rights? I mean, women's rights are... What happened to people caring about that? Because anybody that cares about a woman's right is not going to support these transgender females, their biological males, coming and just slaughtering them in their sports, taking away all their opportunities. It's just, there's so many questions, there's so many things to ask. There's so many things you can ask these people that they don't have an answer to. They have a way to work around it and talk around it and circle around it, but they don't have a genuine answer to any of these. So, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. I hope you watch the documentary. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Next week, we'll be talking about more stuff. Please stand up for your kids. stand up for everybody's kids. Love one another. If you disagree, it's okay. We can learn from each other. And I'll leave you with this question. Please comment or post on our page, whatever you want to do. But I'll leave you with this. What is a woman? Bye, guys.